आज के विशिष्ट अतिथि डॉक्टर स्वपन दासगुप्ता साहब से अनुरोध करूंगा कि वो अपना वक्तव्य रखें।
Well, thank you very much. I think I'll speak in English because if I chose to speak in Hindi, sir, if you'll pardon me, I think you might learn a bit of Bengali in the process. I think Anirban was quite right when he said that there is no better enunciator than Sri Suresh Prabhu. There's no better enunciator than Sri Suresh Prabhu in explaining what the ideas of New India is. Because there it exists at two levels. One is it exists at the levels of policies, but far more important, it exists at a conceptual level. And it's at that conceptual level which I think we need to address this whole issue first. The question will arise, what was wrong with old India? Why do we need a new India? That's a natural question, and that is a question which a lot of critics have often pointed out. Why? Why are you trying to reinvent the wheel? Isn't India good enough? Yes, India is good enough. But the reason why there is a need for a reinvention is for the principal reason that we have underperformed in terms of our potential. I think everybody in this whole world, and particularly in India, will always tell you, we are a great civilization, we have a great heritage, we have so much potential. And of course the word potential is something which I've been hearing in West Bengal for the past 30 years. One day it will become reality. So the question arises, what was wrong? What was it that was holding us back? We can always talk about policies. Had this policy been done, had that policy been undertaken, we might have gone somewhere else. But I think overall, where we really faltered, where we were really short, was that we never set our goals high enough. We always believed that we should settle for the second best. It's like the highways. It's only now that we've realized that we can actually make highways which don't have potholes. Till a few years ago, it was a commonplace, it was a common understanding that Indian roads must have potholes within 2 years, if not within the same year. It was that attitude. It was understood that railway stations had to be dirty. It was understood that our cars had to be second best or third best. That a technology of the 50s would go on till the 1990s and 2000. And it was understood that nothing in India could be done without what the British called bakshish and which we called a service charge. And that was the basic understanding in which we approach this country. Oh, chalta hai bhai. We are like that only, some people used to say. And to be able to attack this very idea, that we can settle for something better, actually required a lot of stamina. It required a lot of political will, but most important, it was also an intellectual challenge, because one of the biggest obstacles which we have faced in India is that our intellectuals have always preferred India to be a country which is not quite on top, where Indians can be on top, but India is never on top. And I think that is a very important distinction. We've seen throughout the world individual Indians doing very well in life. Extremely well in life. Whether in sports, whether in science, whether in other culture, everything. But the moment you say India, there is a little squeamishness. So the separation of Indians from India that Indians can achieve, but India as a whole cannot achieve. It was that idea which Prime Minister Narendra Modi tried to break. I remember once, he used to have a resurgent, vibrant Gujarat summit every year. It was the first time on such a large scale. Today, every state has some industry things. Bengal means business, some other places mean something else. But that was the first big attempt. And a huge hall was created for that. And I remember asking him once, I said, why have you done this? He said, because I want it to equal Davos in some day. So when your goal is high, when you set yourself the biggest exacting international standards, then you move in that direction. We have celebrated Gandhiji, but we took something wrong from Gandhiji. What we should have taken from Gandhiji was an ethical dimension. Instead, what we took from Gandhiji was the inefficiency of the small scale. Because the small can be also efficient, but it can also be very inefficient. And after independence, with a lot of protection and everything else, it became the inefficiency was lauded, inefficiency was celebrated as an idea, and mediocrity, more than anything else, was enshrined as a principle. So it was that idea, it was this basic, in this environment, that the movement for New India has taken in. Now a lot of people will say, this is a very ideological move. Of course, in some ways it is ideological. It is ideological because it assumes a belief in India. It is prefaced on the idea that India must achieve its potential. But it is not ideological in terms that it must prefer this route, that we must have a free market in this way, that only this sort of privatization will take us there. It is not premised on this. A lot of people have criticized these ideas as saying this is too managerial. It is managerial. Because when you confront a problem, you look for a solution within the parameters of that. You don't look for a solution in terms of what is there in some prescriptive book. In that way, if you were to look at that, then we would be no different from the Marxists. Because they assumed at one time that only a particular form of heavy industry would suffice for India. And they chose it. And they went about it despite certain inefficiencies were there. They also decided that only the public sector, and that the public sector must by definition be inefficient. So, Modi ji, on the other hand, has not taken privatization as a great mantra. There are times when privatization is important. But there are times when privatization does not suit our purpose. Today, for instance, we have actually managed to open up the defense sector to competition, to internal competition. Now some people will say, "Bhai, abhi to hua nahi, kuch nahi kiya." It doesn't happen overnight. An industry which has been only nurtured and allowed to grow only 3-4 years ago will not miraculously start giving you results. But unless you make this as a part of policy, it will not happen. Far more important, some people have said, why is he going on about Swachh Bharat? And they will go outside, they will take a photograph of some garbage dump. And if you want to take a photograph of a garbage dump, you will find them everywhere. There is no shortage of it. But why? Because that has to be the goal. And it will not happen. Because people will not stop spitting overnight. But imagine, when was the last time, after Mahatma Gandhi, a politician actually put a social agenda in part of his political thing? It has not happened. Because it was not considered to be important. They'll say, isme vote kya hai? And frankly speaking, people will not. They will say, "Arey bhai, toilets, kya zarurat hai?" And even now in Uttar Pradesh, you get a big lot of resistance from males. He says, "Hamara to aadat hi hai field mein jaane ke liye." ठीक है. But that has been a liberating experience for women, I assure you. The manner in which the construction of toilets in rural areas has been an empowering experience for women is something to be believed in. Likewise, the idea beforehand was, we used to say, oh, smokeless chulas hum banayenge. And we spent a lot of energy, technological investment, etc., in trying to create smokeless chulas. But the idea that every citizen should have a right to clean cooking gas was not something which was easily realized and was thought to be politically unsaleable. But again here, you look at it one way. They said, you will give them a subsidized chula, you will give them subsidized gas. But क्या होगा? एक बार refill कोई नहीं करेगा. Statistics show us that 75% of the 4 million or so which have been given have actually had refills. Take it, 25% हुआ नहीं. I concede that. But 75%. So the number of people whose lives have been materially changed. So it's the quality of life. It's not GDP in abstraction. It's the quality of life which is very, very important in this context. Likewise, we developed, particularly among the middle classes, we developed a complete aversion, a hatred for anything which said of welfare. Kyunki we remembered what Rajiv Gandhi had said, कि 15 paisa out of every rupee which was spent actually traveled down to the beneficiary. We realized that, and that was the truth. Rajiv Gandhi was not exaggerating. He may have been indiscreet, but he was not telling a lie in this case. The fact that we can actually have technology and have people get the money which is directly into their bank accounts was something which was resisted politically. क्यों? आप जानते हैं क्यों it was resisted politically? क्यों किसी का कमीशन तो कम हो गया. मैं कुछ दिन पहले एक मोटर व्हीकल्स बिल हो रहे थे, उसमें कमेटी में था बहुत दिन में. Motor vehicles bill ultimately did not pass through parliament because बहुत सा obstruction हुआ, etc. Rajya Sabha में in particular. But where is the opposition coming from? It's coming from the RTOs. And why is it coming from the RTOs? I don't have to spell it out why it's coming from the RTOs. You had the communists who are saying RTOs are going to get affected. Against that, when we said, but the ordinary citizen, whoever buys a car is going to benefit. It was the same thing with the passports. The amount of resistance you got from people who said, but the passport office का तो काम आप खत्म कर दिया. Passport officer क्या करेंगे? आजकल आप दो दिन 3 दिन में पासपोर्ट मिल रहे हैं. पहले आप लोग को 1 महीना 2 महीने, अभी भी एक गड़बड़ है वो पुलिस वेरिफिकेशन में. chakkar hota hai. But even that has been cut down. So the idea that you can make life easier for the common person by making government work for them instead of you working to fuel the government. That is a basic attitude. And it's that attitude. That's why I'm saying, when we are talking about New India, we are basically talking about a big shift in attitudes. At the end of the day, we only have one life. At least, knowingly we have one life. We may have other lives unknowingly. And I think it is our right to enjoy that life. It is also within our right to bequeath a better life to a future generation. I think it was one of the great British philosophers who said that governance is basically a contract involving the living, the dead, and the unborn. And I think it is trying to make that India. We have often spoken about India's destiny. We have spoken about India assuming the leadership of Asia. We have spoken about the 21st century being the Asian century. But that won't come just by proclaiming. That वो लिखा है. हम लोग का भी एक problem है ना, we say it's written. We have to make it happen. And I think it is trying to make it happen that Modi ji has been a political leader with a phenomenal difference. He is not an ordinary politician. He is a politician who has a sense of destiny, who has a sense of mission, and whose commitment to India and its people overrides everything else. And I think that challenge, that we have a very different form of Prime Minister, that we are actually blessed in some ways to have a leader like that, is gradually getting percolated and realized. And more I see these days, I think the craze which comes about when he arrives, when he's there, is not because he's a rock star, it's not because he's Shah Rukh Khan, but because he means something very, very different, and we feel very proud of him. Thank you very much.